Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online, this is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It may be Friday the 13th, but I am not superstitious. So, on tonight's show, we will talk about the Office for National Statistics released figures on excess deaths this week, excluding the pandemic. The figures are at their worst since 1951. That's right, that's excluding the pandemic. COVID deaths only make up a minority of recent deaths. That's not an opinion, that's independent figures based on facts, data and analysis. So what on earth is going on? Then I'm going to speak to Dr. Josh Getsko about his research being used by an online blog which Mr. Andrew Bridgen used in that famous tweet, and find out more about what the article was and why he wrote it. And finally, I talked to commentator and anti-racism campaigner Bushra Sheikh, and I tried to get to the bottom of what being an anti-racist actually means. All of that, maybe more, coming up after news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hello there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy's been found not guilty of 6 rape charges against 4 young women. Mendy was also found not guilty on 1 count of sexual assault, but jurors at Chester Crown Court were unable to reach a verdict on 2 further counts, and a retrial will take place in June. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the time for action on the Northern Ireland Protocol is now. Delivering his key speech at Queen's University in Belfast, Sir Keir also promised his party will remain a good faith guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement. He's urged the Prime Minister to recognise past mistakes and to resolve issues over the post-Brexit trading arrangements.
So I say to the Prime Minister, if there is a deal to do in coming weeks, do it. Whatever political cover you need, whatever mechanisms in Westminster you require, if it delivers for our national interest and the people of Northern Ireland, we will support you. The time for action on the protocol is now.
The economy unexpectedly grew by 0.1% between October and November last year, despite the soaring cost of living. The Office for National Statistics recorded a slowdown in growth, though. That was after a 0.5% increase the previous month. It says the economy was boosted by people going to pubs and restaurants to watch the World Cup. A 15-year-old girl died during an adrenaline-fuelled speedboat ride when the skipper failed to pay attention, a court has heard. Emily Lewis suffered unsurvivable injuries when the rigid, inflatable boat hit a buoy at almost 37 knots in Southampton water in August 2020. A number of other passengers were seriously injured. Michael Laurence, who was driving the boat, denies manslaughter by gross negligence. Donald Trump's company has been fined £1.3 million for a number of tax crimes, including conspiracy, criminal fraud and falsifying business records. The former president did not go on trial himself and denied any knowledge that his former executives illegally evaded paying tax over a period of 15 years. However, the Trump Organization was convicted for 17 counts of tax fraud last month. Trump has described the case as a politically motivated witch hunt. His lawyers have vowed to appeal the verdict. At least 7 people have been killed in the US states of Atlanta and Georgia after a deadly tornado swept across the south of the country. Dozens of twisters have left a trail of destruction in Alabama, not Atlanta and Georgia, destroying several homes, flipping cars and uprooting trees. Tens of thousands of people were also without power in 4 states. US weather services say the storms have passed, but strong winds will persist through tomorrow. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. But now it's back to Laurence Fox.
Hello, it's nice to be back. Well, this strange, topsy-turvy, upside-downy, end-of-daisy world has thrown up a real cracker this week as the media and the regime did their utmost to socially distance the public from gathering to take a look at an enormous elephant wandering around the room with the words excess deaths written on it. Week 51 of 2022 saw the number of excess deaths in private homes alone at nearly 40% above the 5-year average, which you would have thought would have raised a few eyebrows, or even be splattered across the front pages of his Vestia with the same amount of terrified Technicolor horror as during the dark days of the pandemic. You might have thought that, but you would be wrong. From the mainstream media, tumbleweed. Where's the outrage for these lives? Where are the calls for an investigation as to why the excess deaths were at their highest since 1951? And they weren't COVID. The few media outlets who actually bothered to do some journalisming came up with their answer pretty quickly. It was the NHS, overwhelmed and underfunded as always. But the NHS only operates in the UK, so how do you explain the excess deaths elsewhere around the world, one might ask? Is there any chance that it might have been something to do with the shut up, racist? Came the inevitable reply. And there you have it. The R word, the ultimate in free speech suppressants. Enter stage right of centre, Andrew Bridgen, MP for North West Leicestershire, who just wouldn't let it go. It's the vaccine, he said. In a 20-minute speech in the House of Commons, he said the quiet part out loud, calling for an immediate stop to the vaccine rollout, especially for children for whom the overwhelming majority of COVID is nothing but a mild bug. He also predicted an incoming smear campaign against him of rigorous nastiness. And upon leaving the House, he proceeded to say the same thing online, culminating in that tweet, which appeared to set in motion Project Destroy Bridgen. His quoting of a prominent Jewish researcher was going to be wrangled, spangled and mangled until Mr. Bridgen was permanently cast as the anti-Semite hate preacher everyone always suspected he was. And it all began with that bastion of truth, uprightness, reliability. Matthew Hancock, doing what I presume he was told to do, with the assistance of his parliamentary privilege, decrying Mr. Bridgen's comment as anti-Semitic. Hancock asked Rishi whether he agreed that it was an anti-Semitic remark, and the Prime Minister valiantly did agree with Matt's planted question. Hancock wandered off and tweeted in triumph how disgusting and anti-Semitic everything is. Something you may come to regret, possibly. What with Twitter not providing the same privilege that Parliament affords Matty. Everyone then started talking about racism all day. No one mentioned that it was a Jewish researcher Mr. Bridgen was quoting. Can you be a Jewish anti-Semite? Answers on a postcard, please. But most importantly, no one was talking about the very thing Mr. Bridgen had stuck his neck out about. The potential harms of these so-called vaccines, which a growing number of people think are about as reliable as Del Boy's Robin Reliant. I wonder if any figures will be released or published as to the booster uptake within frontline NHS staff this winter. That might be a handy weather vane, mightn't it? I mean, you expect this sort of thing on Jeremy Vine, the race hustlers out there competing each other for how many times they can call someone else a racist in a minute. And you expect it from Hollywood halfwits like Jamelia Jamil, screeching racist slurs at our very ethnically diverse front benchers with absolutely no pushback or consequence whatsoever. But then again, they are the exact thing they accuse us of, aren't they? But in Parliament, this is where debate is honed, where timeless and beautifully woven speeches have rolled along the walls, where the whip and snap of arguments of global significance reverberate around those hallowed halls. Parliament has now been reduced to this. Matt Hancock, Nadeem Zawi, and Savage Jabid, all rounding on a colleague and screeching anti-Semite at him for doing his job, which is to ask questions and raise important issues. Britain's fine heritage of free speech keeps just hitting new lows. It's time to call an end to this weak-minded, damaging and inaccurate use of calling anyone you disagree with a racist to shut them up. The more we devalue that word, the more we create room for real racists to thrive. In the same way, the longer the regime refuse to address the elephant in the room, the more excess deaths there will be, and the more harm will be done to the people who trusted them with their very lives. With all of that in mind, I want to ask you, what do you think? Do you think Andrew Bridgen has been treated fairly? Email your views at gbnews.uk or tweet me at Lots of Fox. Excess deaths. Not a cheery subject, but a necessary one. On the same week, ambulance workers go on strike, putting even more strain on an already crippled NHS and patients needing life-saving treatment facing months sitting on a waiting list. The figures released by the ONS show that 40% of deaths occurred in private homes. So if it isn't in care homes, and if it isn't in hospitals, what and where are these deaths coming from? Joining me to discuss this is NHS doctor Bob Gill. Good evening, Bob.
Hi, Laurence.
Bob, what is causing the rise in these excess deaths?
Well, I think we have an NHS which is unfortunately now deeply dysfunctional, having suffered a decade of relative defunding. We know that in the lead up to the pandemic, there were 40,000 nurse vacancies, 10,000 doctor vacancies, and we'd lost 25,000 bed capacity. The figures we are seeing now in terms of patients waiting to be admitted more than 12 hours after a decision has been made that they're sick enough to require admission, they are staggering. Now, in October alone, there were 44,000 people waiting for a bed more than 12 hours, and we know that there is an increased death risk if you're waiting in A&E like that, in overcrowded A&Es. For every 80 patients waiting in those circumstances, there's one preventable death. So I think that's a big factor, the under-resourcing, the lack of capacity, and the lack of staff leading to excess death. But the other parts of the dysfunctioning NHS is partly down to the COVID and the lockdowns and how everything was focused on the pandemic. That has built in a delay in making diagnoses. So people who don't have an early diagnosis, particularly for serious illness, they will experience a shorter life expectancy. That might also be contributing to this excess death rate.
And what about deaths around the world? What about a rise in excess deaths around the world? If obviously there are problems with the National Health Service, as we know, but we're seeing excess deaths around the world, Germany, all over Europe. Actually, Sweden has some of the lowest increase in excess deaths. What would you attribute that to? Are we allowed to talk about the vaccine and the harms possibly caused by it?
Well, you know, in health and in science, you should never shut down or, try to censor debate. The point you raise about excess death in other countries that haven't faced the same challenges as the NHS need to be explored. So we need to look for commonality, common factors, but the whole atmosphere of censoring dissenting voices, I totally object and oppose. So, we need investigation. We don't need silence. We need attention. We need independent scrutiny of the figures, and we need some answers because, I'm hearing concerns from reputable voices in terms of the damage done by the vaccine. We know that Pfizer was very secretive about their raw data. We know reanalysis of the raw data has found that within their own figures, there was a 1 in 800 chance of serious adverse events. Now, if that is contributing in some way to these excess deaths, we need to know about it. The sooner the better.
Well, that's very brave of you to say, and thank you for doing so. If we could rewind back to the beginning of this pandemic, and the Prime Minister had asked you, what shall we do for the good of the nation? What would you have advised him that day?
I would have advised him to learn as much as possible about the seriousness of the infection. What was the true fatality rate rather than the case fatality rate, which was what we were often discussing. How reliable are these projections on potential death rates? Were we being scared into a state of overreacting? Now, looking back, we know that the figures for the infection fatality rate are much lower than they were projected at that point. So some of the decisions that were made were contradictory. Some of the rationale about, first of all, we were told this vaccine would stop the spread of the pandemic. We were made to feel guilty to protect Granny by being vaccinated. Then we're told that they never tested for transmission. And now we know that transmission is definitely not held by the vaccine. So why were so many people who were very low risk persuaded or bullied or coerced into taking a vaccine? And why were people with natural immunity, which we know is better for you than the vaccine, why were they also forced or coerced into taking the vaccine? So there are lots of unanswered questions, irrational decisions, which actually went against some of the government advice. I know the person responsible for procuring the vaccines initially thought that this would be targeted to the high-risk groups, but the rollout just kept expanding and expanding. I'm deeply worried about the extension of the vaccine to children because they are close to zero risk.
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Bob, Gill, thank you very much. Now, the people that scream in my ear, because I'm always saying the wrong thing, have asked me to read this, and I will do so with utter sincerity. The Pfizer vaccine is one of the 3 COVID vaccines that are licensed for use in the UK and are currently available. The NHS website says the coronavirus vaccines are safe and effective. They give you best protection against COVID-19. See? So, that tweet, that article, where did it come from? I can tell you. The article was written by Dr. Josh Getsko, and he joins me now. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Tell me what motivated you to write this piece.
Well, this is an issue that I've been looking at for quite a long time, the adverse events after the COVID-19 vaccines. I think I was initially skeptical because, Pfizer and all of these companies are corporate criminals. As a criminologist, it's one of the things that we, it's obvious that these are career criminals, these corporations. So I was very skeptical. And then, I live in Israel, and we were the first and most vaccinated country at the time. And I saw things happening to people around me, people I knew, that kind of prompted me to look into it further. So I started looking at the American vaccine adverse events reporting system, the yellow card system, the European system, ultravigilance, and just seeing very early on, the adverse event reporting just skyrocketing. So I knew we had a real problem on our hands, and I've been devoting a lot of time since then to trying to raise awareness of it.
And do you think, obviously, it's very difficult for people to think that this stuff is done maliciously or malevolently, but there is a large cohort of people that think that it is. Do you think that the story of this vaccine harm is going to come out, or do you think it's going to be suppressed?
Well, it's already come out because the people have voted with their feet, right? Confidence in these vaccines is completely cratered. The number of people getting this new booster shot in Israel is next to zero. And so the story is out. People understand it. There was a big survey done in the US. I think very recently, I think something like half of all people said they thought they knew somebody who had some harm done. A quarter thought they knew somebody who had died from it. So the story is out. It's just not being reported in the news. Whether the establishment will ever admit it, it's hard to say because they have blood on their hands. And so to admit this is to admit to horrible negligence at the very least. And I don't think that, they're going to be able to do that. So I really don't know.
And obviously that is your opinion as a criminologist and sociologist. Do you believe that there should be an investigation? Do you believe that we should? What would your advice be to your average person on the street in the UK who is thinking, it's winter time, I'm being told to get boosted? What would you tell them?
What would I tell them? I would tell them to look very carefully, to not necessarily trust what they're hearing from the mainstream media, because
why is there such a why is the mainstream media? We've seen the stamping down of Andrew Bridgen and Nassim Malhotra, and the BBC have only just started talking about this today, I think, for the first time. Why is there such a blackout in the mainstream media? Is that because of the relationship they have with the government, or what is it?
Well, I can't speak very well to the situation in the United Kingdom. I think there are many issues involved. One, of course, is simply an issue of advertising dollars. I understand that might not be as much of an issue in the United Kingdom, but think about it this way: all of these companies have backed and prodded and pleaded with the people to get the vaccines, and have never acknowledged any issues with the vaccines or major issues with the vaccines. So they, for them now to come around and do a full 360 admits to their own incompetence at the very least. And so I don't see why they would, why would they do that? They have no interest in making this known. Now, you could tell other stories if you wanted to, of why this and why that, but it just detracts from the simple fact, which is that they're not reporting it, right? The Andrew Bridgen story is a perfect example of this, because the article that I wrote about this is bombshell. The news is bombshell, and yet it was completely drowned out by the controversy surrounding Bridgen, and it's very, very unfortunate, because what we're learning now, right? The article is about how the CDC did a safety signal analysis of the vaccine adverse events reporting system. They waited 15 months after the vaccine rollout to do that, and what they found is horrifying, really.
I would urge everybody who is curious about this to go and read Josh's Substack article on this. It's absolutely horrifying. Josh, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Right, coming up, what's in a word? Back in 3.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest,
balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
On Mark Dolan tonight from 8 with the final word on the Prince Harry saga. I'll be joined live in the studio by his former bodyguard, Ken Wharf. In my big opinion, as the Church of England use £100 million to apologise for slavery, woke Welby has lost the plot. In my take at 10, why have Waitrose stopped stocking Warburton's delicious crumpets? I'll be picking a side in the bread wars. And my Mark Meets guest is hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator, Spitting Image star Steve Nallen. Plus my GB News clips of the week. We're live from 8.
Regardless of your thoughts on the vaccine, the research or the silence surrounding these questions, we still have to address the statement itself. To help me navigate the complex and treacherous language, I am joined this evening by Adam Callier. Good evening, Adam.
Hi, good evening.
Adam, do you believe Andrew Bridgen's words were anti-Semitic?
No, and I'm not really sure anyone other than Matt Hancock really does, and the less Matt Hancock says about anything, the better, to be honest.
Right. But it obviously created a furore online and social media. Do you think he was clumsy with the way he was using his language? Do you think he could have expressed himself better? Are these comparisons totally inappropriate always and never to be used ever?
Pretty much. I think it was crass and it was not necessary. There seems to be this thing these days where people compare everything to the Holocaust or a person you don't like to Hitler. It's not necessary. If something is bad, explain why it's bad in its own right without bringing up something where 6 million people, 6 million Jews and other people died, or by comparing someone to someone that ordered that mass murder of people. It's just not necessary.
And do you believe that his right to stand up and the way he's been treated to talk about his views on the vaccine, and do you think that sort of speech is acceptable? And the way he's been treated?
I have no problem with it. I've had all the vaccines and whatever. I know people that haven't. You're quite entitled to have your own opinions. I do think there's a lot of hysteria around what he's saying. Everyone in Parliament can't just have the same views. They don't have the same views on everything else. So why has everybody got to have the same views when it comes to the vaccine? He's quite entitled to have I don't even know if it's fully anti-vax, but he's quite entitled to have those views. He just doesn't need to bring Jewish people and the Holocaust into it, to be honest.
Yeah, but I don't think he was bringing Jewish people and the Holocaust into it. I think what he was doing was quoting somebody else who happened to be Jewish. Is that not the correct? Am I not correct in what I'm saying there?
He is, but his tweet saying this is the worst thing since the Holocaust.
But it's
completely over-exaggerated, to be honest. This is not the worst thing since the Holocaust, and he just doesn't need to mention the Holocaust. He can say this is terrible, this is awful. He doesn't need to bring that into it.
And more broadly, isn't a reminder, because as generations move on and on and on, and we forget past atrocities and all of these things, is it not important and and crucial that we remember the disaster and the appallingness of the Holocaust. And however clumsy this was, it was a way of trying to say, you know, these things are absolutely dreadful.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it, to be fair. And of course, it's important to remember that we have Holocaust museums, we have the Holocaust Education Trust, we have education about it in schools that, you know, never stop learning about it, obviously, like with every atrocity, but there is a time and a place to bring it up, and that just wasn't it.
Is there when is the time and the place to bring it up in public? I know that you're saying there's a lot of overuse of these terms, but, you know, what about a massacre in Ukraine, for example? Can one compare that to when can one?
The massacres in Ukraine are the massacres in Ukraine. The Holocaust is the Holocaust. Genocides everywhere are their own separate genocides. They just don't need. It's not an oppression Olympics. We don't need to compare everything to everything.
And would you say that these allegations of anti-Semitism have been weaponised?
I wouldn't say they've been weaponised. I'd just say they're absolutely ridiculous. Matt Hancock didn't need to get up and say Andrew Bridgen is an anti-Semite. On whose authority is he saying that? He's not spoken to anyone in the Jewish community about it.
Well, I'd imagine on the authority of whoever handed him the piece of...
He is not an anti-Semite.
I imagine on the authority of whoever handed him the piece of paper and told him to say what he did. Anyway, good. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining me. Right, Daily Star journalist. After the break, my one-to-one, I really enjoyed this one, interview with commentator and anti-racism campaigner Bushra Sheikh. Don't go away.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, once a week in a neutral location, I sit down with an increasingly stale bunch of sandwiches, which Cass, my producer, eats afterwards. And I discuss the things that I find interesting in life. And this week I spoke with Bushra Sheikh, commentator and anti-racism campaigner. And here is how we got on. Bushra Sheikh, thank you so much for joining me.
Very welcome, Laurence.
For our very light-hearted conversations about things. Let's start with the big one, the most light-hearted question of all. Define the term racism.
Okay, if I was to define racism, I would say it is when a person presents an action or speaks about something which is discriminative of the other person because of their race.
That's exactly how I define the term racism. Now let's go. Have you ever heard of the Equal Treatment Bench book?
No, I haven't actually.
It's guidance for top judges.
Okay.
It's over 500 pages long, and it came out just the same time as the Race and Ethnic Disparities report came out, which defined racism.
Okay.
It's pretty much exactly the same way as you defined it.
Yeah.
But this is what the guidance for judges says. Racism is a term defined more by effects/outcomes than by motives. A racist action or a person who acts in a racist way is not necessarily racially prejudiced. However, the term is often used to describe a combination of conscious or unconscious prejudice and power to implement action which leads, however unintentionally, to disproportionate disadvantage for BAME people. Can't say BAME anymore. People who use the term racist to describe the actions of others may or may not mean that the other person is personally prejudiced.
Wow.
Discuss.
Wow. Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Oh, well, I don't know if I agree or disagree. Why? Because I think right there you've just read out a number of things, probably 7 or 8 things that we'd have to unpack and really get to the crux of, because a part of it is saying, well, there is prejudice, and then they're saying, but that prejudice may not be really like a subconscious bias that they hold, and it also might mean that what they're saying is not really what they mean.
It basically says, to me, it says, everybody with white skin is a racist.
Okay.
That's what it says to me. It goes, it may or may not be, you may not mean to be,
Yeah.
but you definitely are, just in case, side point, caveat 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And this is guidance for judges. But why do we not live in a world where we go, racism is discriminating against someone based on their race?
I guess because to say something like that is a huge accusation. I think that's the first thing. I think because one of the things that we're tackling globally is racism. And I do know that...
Systemically, globally? Now,
yes, correct. Okay. And when we talk about it, we always say that a person who is white technically cannot experience racism.
How come?
Simply because they are born with a privilege, which is the colour of their skin.
But what about the working class kids in the north of England who don't go to university?
Yes, but that's
and have
not...
no money. Are they privileged?
It's different, right? Because...
Are you going to redefine the meaning of the word privilege?
Privilege is... I mean, we don't have to go into semantics right now.
Okay.
But there is a privilege based on the colour of your skin. Now, you can either accept that exists.
Is there black privilege?
No, there isn't.
So there's only white privilege?
There is only white privilege.
It sounds dreadfully like racism.
I mean, saying that a person has privilege based on their colour isn't the same as racism, because you're not attacking the person. Having a privilege is a good thing, and I would love to have been
But again, back
raised.
to the little white kids who don't have any privilege or any money.
But that's not. But that's.
Are they privileged? Is it going to help
They
them?
can be. So
They can be.
yeah. So if you put 2 different people together, and one person's a person of colour and the other person is white, and you give them both the same opportunity, like a door. Let's call it a door. There is a bigger chance by statistics and facts that the white person will have a better opportunity for that.
Except if you're a working class kid from the north of England.
But that's
where you have a much lower chance than your black and Asian people of succeeding. I mean, that is also a fact. What I want to say is, like, I just take someone at face value. Obviously, you notice people's skin colour. You do. And one of the things you then do is go, where are you from?
Yeah.
People ask me where I'm from all the time because they think I'm from Denmark.
Yeah.
Do you think that's Do you think that's a racist thing to say?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not. I think we are curious and we are human beings, and part of us is to get to know each other. You know, we are different, and clearly when we look different, it means that we come from a different background. And I think that genuine curiosity, I think you can come across individuals that will use that and guise the curiosity as something else.
Do you think Lady Hussey was doing that?
You know what? After sort of thinking about it, because obviously that story, you know, unfolded, and God, you know what? It can go either way. Because if we want to talk about a subconscious bias, perhaps she did have that, but perhaps she was also curious.
But we don't know.
No, we don't know.
But
yeah.
what we do know is that Ngozi Fellaini has pretty strong political views in one direction and documented the entire conversation and presented it in the way that she did. So I didn't see it as a good faith exchange.
Okay,
particularly
I understand
to
that.
me.
Yeah.
So obviously, all of us want to reduce. I don't think you can ever obliterate racism. I just don't think it's possible.
No, I don't think it's possible.
It's just not possible. And there's also an argument, as we were saying before we started, that everyone is a little bit racist in some way or another. But we want to reduce drastically as racism as much as possible, because it's horrible to judge someone or criticise someone based on something they can do nothing about.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the fact that you run an anti-racist organisation.
Yes, correct.
Can I ask what the difference between, what's the opposite of anti-racism? What's the opposite of an anti-racist?
So the opposite of the anti-racist is somebody who obviously is clearly somebody who is racist. So we do anti-racism because what we say is it's more about education. It's about people that are ill-informed, not well-informed enough to understand that perhaps they do hold a stereotypical prejudice based on historical events or just history in general. So they're sort of carrying, even some people can say you've got a chip on your shoulder, you are angry and upset about history, you're angry why something's happened to you and why a group of people ostracized you or discriminated against. So the anti-racism campaigns are more about kind of informed and educating people on what racism looks like and what it can look like today.
Can you see that it would, to some people, it's like it is a slightly semantic trap?
Yeah.
Which is that you say, anti-racism sounds brilliant.
Yeah.
I think all of us are anti-racist.
Yeah.
But do you think that racism is on the rise, or do you think it's on the fall?
My personal opinion, I believe that racism is on the fall. I don't think it's something that is getting worse. I think, in fact, the tools and the things that we have present today is really helping drive that. I think the education system as well has incorporated so much about this now. And I believe at one time there was this thing about seeing everybody the same, and I think that's quite unhealthy.
What do you mean, sir?
So at some stage in schools, I actually recant being told that we should all look at each other as the same. Right?
That's strange.
And it's strange. And in school, even as a child, I was taught that. And after speaking to many people, they also said the same thing as me. And even now, there are adults exist who will even say, but we're all the same. And I'm like, well, that's actually counterproductive, because if you think that we're all the same, then it doesn't make us different. So you've got to acknowledge that there is a difference between us, but see those things in a good light. Earlier on before this, we were talking about the kind of stereotyping again. And I think a lot of that, it stems from that, because people often box categories and groups of people up according to the kind of bad things that they did. And I think, if we really want to have open discourse about it, we've got to be really honest about the thoughts that go in our mind and what we say, because I really know things about, I don't know, crime, for example. And I've had it in the past where people link like the Black community to crime. But when you really want to have a conversation about that, it's very difficult. So unless we don't talk about these things honestly, we're never going to, have like a positive outcome.
Well, yeah, I suppose I don't know if they're cultural things, because I don't think it's down necessarily to skin colour, but all of the research that they've done in America is the reason why such a small percentage of the population commit such a large amount of 50% of the crime is fatherlessness.
Yeah.
Essentially. So I don't think that's got anything to do with skin colour.
No, I don't either.
And there must be very complex reasons that one can look back, all the way back through Jim Crow, all the way back to slavery, as to why that is. But then you find some interesting statistics, which is that during Jim Crow and during slavery even, Black families had a higher rate of staying together than white families did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not my concern, but my worry is that if we talk about it a lot, you know, we stop seeing the individual in the other person. And you know, it's why I particularly don't like Meghan Markle very much.
Okay.
Because she talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know you're from South Asia.
Yeah.
Right? But you could very easily be from Sicily.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, when people meet me, they do ask me. They actually ask me where I'm from, and sometimes I say where I'm from, and they get confused because they think I'm from somewhere else. So yeah, of course, that experience.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
What's your take on the Meghan and Harry Monathon?
Oh gosh, look, I've got loads of backlash because obviously as an anti-racism campaigner, which by the way, anti just means against racism. But yeah, as an anti-racism campaigner, apparently I should have been supporting her. But the truth is, what I try to tell people is I don't like her. There is something about her that doesn't sit right with me.
She looks like a bully, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I just feel like, is she playing the racism card just to suit the kind of, money? Okay, fine, could be money. But because for me, I always look at history to show me a lot about an individual. And I feel like she's never really has spoken about that in the past. And all of a sudden, we're talking about racism now linked to Meghan. So, I've got a lot of things to say about her.
She does a lot against the cause of harmony.
Yes.
Which is what we're doing. And I think we're probably in a funny time in the West anyway, as, you know, I've said this millions of times, my nephews and nieces, they're all mixed race. And in the next 2 or 3 generations, I think pretty much most people are going to be in
Yeah,
mixed race.
yeah.
So we're in this sort of clunky time, and I wonder whether heightening the noise on racism, like they did a talk at my son's school. How do I talk to my child about race?
Yeah.
It's like, don't just say not that we're all the same, but
Yeah.
just love everybody.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
unless they're bullying, judge them on their actions, not their this.
And I think instead of always finding something that's not the same in our cultures and people of color, I think there's so much that connects us together. So I think if we focus on the things that are alike, food, culture, like, for instance, I went to Italy and I spent some time in Italy, and I realized that they're so traditional in their family values, and it was so close to me as a South Asian Muslim family. So much of the things that we like and the things that we do are the same. So I think it's really important that people also don't always talk about the things of why we're different. We look at the things of why we're the same. And I think that's an important discussion to have.
That sounds like a really positive thing.
Yeah.
It would seem like you wouldn't need to, that wouldn't be anti-racism, that would just be pro-harmony.
Yeah.
It's like pro-choice or pro-life.
I mean, also like Laurence, what I was thinking is that I think we're in a time where lots of people think that being drama central is productive. And just going by history, like even when I spoke to my grandmother, God bless her, when she was alive, she always spoke about peace and she always spoke about harmony. And I just believe that at the moment we are facing this challenge, which is let's just have drama, and sometimes drama borderlines entertainment. And yes, it might be fun for 5 minutes, but actually, what does peace look like? What does harmony look like between people? We do have to focus on that.
Well, it's almost, I completely agree with you, but it's almost like the horse has already bolted.
Yeah.
Because I'm guilty of it. If someone attacks me, I get attacked frequently. I'm frequently called a myriad of things that are just not true to me.
Yeah.
And I find it very, very upsetting. And sometimes I will push back really hard because I will go, you're attacking my good name.
Yeah.
And I take that very personally.
Yeah.
So I wonder how we put the genie back in the box. What do you reckon? How do we promote harmony? By trying to see the positives in each other as individuals.
Definitely.
Does your faith play any part in that, and are you a practicing Muslim? I mean, are you an ethical
Muslim? Yeah. So I'm for sure a Muslim, but practicing Muslim again is questionable because people may argue, well, no, you're not practicing, considering the fact that I used to wear hijab and I don't
I know
now.
you slept in your hijab and covered your eyebrows in case you go to hell.
I did. I used to cover my hijab up to my eyebrows, and my mum used to prise it off me. This was when I was like 9.
So your
10 years old.
your mum's going, get it off, babe.
Yeah. My mum used to try to get it off me when I was.
Why were you so into it?
Oh gosh, it's it was just one of those things. Going to mosque, it was it's part of our faith. You go to mosque when you're younger. And and if you've got a teacher, you are being influenced by them.
Yeah.
And at that time, look, life to me at that time was on a reward system. So for me, I felt like all the good deeds that I did, considering I was only 9 years old, but all the good deeds that I would do would ultimately get me to heaven. And I'm so young. I have no understanding of life. This was the one thing that wasn't controllable, I guess, for me. I was so young, wasn't I? I was just.
Yeah, no, I think people should be allowed to, do whatever they want.
Yeah.
What do you think about as a visitor in another country that you should ascribe to their cultural norms? Or I mean, what are your views on people when you see the full,
veil,
the full thing with the kind of black and the little gold thing?
Yeah.
What do you think that's fine? Wear whatever you like.
Yeah, I believe, look, people should, I'm like the least judgmental person. So if that's something that you are adopting to wear as a symbol of something, then sure. For me, I always say, understand why you're doing something. Because when I lived my own experiences in the past, I didn't fully understand something. So I think it's important for people to know why they're doing something. Always know the why behind everything that you're doing. Because it's not healthy to do something because someone else told you to do it. That means you're doing something for them and not for yourself. And I do believe that there is an element that if you do travel and you go to different countries, they have a different culture, the way things work in that country is different. So I think it's important that we are respectful of that. But then now, we are in a climate where there is a East meets West. We've got faith and non-faith, and that is merging slightly. So like you said, you'd have pockets of places where you can be a little bit freer. But I do feel like to adhere to kind of rules and respecting that country actually says more about a person's character than anything else.
Right. I think, obviously, we have a cultural heritage of looking at each other's faces.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody who you can't see their face,
Yeah.
you feel immediately othered from them, alienated from them, that you can't connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I can see why some people find that a bit sort of stressful.
Yeah, and this obviously goes back to the debate as a Muslim. That's something that I question all the time, and I believe this is my interpretation, that the face veil isn't compulsory, because you're right. There are certain things that we do when we speak to each other. You need to see a person's face. You've got these gestures. You know, you've got the language that they're speaking is not only verbal. You see, so you've got the tone of the voice. You've got the body language, and when you're covering everything up, you're not able to get that. So I don't believe the face veil is it's fully like an obligation in Islam. I definitely think it's a choice. And a part of me always questions the practicality of something. So if you're going to, because this is thoughts that I had when I was covering, if I'm wearing a long dress all of the time and I'm in London and it's raining, like it can be quite dangerous, because I remember at one point just being soaked up to my knee and having to run around with I had 3 children at the time, all under the age of 5, and it was just not practical for me. Hence why I believe that there are some cultures that we've adopted from other countries. So this long dress, even, I don't know, have you seen some men wear this very white dress? It's called the thobe.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, which is cool, right?
I've got one.
Oh, have you? Have you got one? And
one
have you got the kondura and everything to like match?
I've got the whole lot. I do wear it.
Yes, I mean, if you think about it from like a historical sense, I had to educate a few people to say that the thobe and the abaya are actually cultural dress that comes from Saudi Arabia. It's not actually Islamic. It's a cultural dress. And when you look at the way Muslim men used to be in the past, they used to ride horses. They used to go to war. If you imagine wearing the thobe and trying to do anything in that, you can't run because the width is ridiculous. So you literally fall over.
But you look great.
I mean, you look great, but it's impractical. So little things like this, I think that comes under the banner of education and being informed.
I love cultural appropriation. I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Without cultural appropriation, I would never have got to have pad krapao.
Yeah.
Minced chicken.
Yeah, okay.
And rice.
Yeah.
And hot chili and basil, and just my favourite food on earth.
Yeah.
Do you think are there any examples of bad cultural appropriation?
No, I think, I don't know what term you want to put this under, but there is a very detrimental woke culture that exists. I hate that word.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
This is Mark Dolan Tonight, which now starts at the earlier time of 8 p.m. every Friday and Saturday night, right through until 11. In just a moment, my now legendary Clips of the Week. Yes, we pulled together all of the best bits from 7 days of great output here at the People's Channel. What a great start to your weekend. Also this hour, former member of the European Parliament and Football Club chairman Rupert Lowe joins me. We'll be asking if the political elites are trying to undo Brexit. We'll also speak to royal bodyguard Ken Wharf live in the studio to give us his insider take on 2 weeks of royal mayhem. And the world champion boxer Ebony Bridges will be on the show later to tell us why sex and sport can mix. Now, later in the show, in the big question, after the BBC release a 10-part Shamima Begum podcast, I'll be asking, should we forgive terrorists? Shamima Begum's lawyer joins us live. And my Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen, a total legend of comedy. Lots to get through. It is Friday night, so I want to stimulate you and inform you in equal measure and have plenty of fun along the way. We don't do boring, not on my watch. But first, the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hello, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been found not guilty on 6 counts of rape and on 1 count of sexual assault against 5 women. However, the France international faces a retrial on 1 count of rape and on 1 of attempted rape after the jury failed to reach verdicts after the 5-month-long trial at Chester Crown Court. His retrial has been scheduled for the end of June. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is urging the Prime Minister to resolve the Northern Ireland Protocol dispute as a matter of urgency. On a 2-day visit to the province, Sir Keir urged Rishi Sunak to make a deal to solve problems with the post-Brexit trading arrangements, and he said Labour would provide political cover and support to get it through Parliament. Sir Keir also promised his party will remain a good faith guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement.
So I say to the Prime Minister,